Hi, my name's Shay. I go by she, her, and they, them. I work at the town hall and I'm an information officer.
My name's Chanoy and I opened the Jimbool Imaginarium. I'm also Deputy Mayor of Hindmarsh Shire Council.
So I am Lauren Larkins. I am the director of the Washington Regional Art Gallery. I identify as she, her.
My name is Kate. My pronouns are she, her. I have been living in the Wimmera for about 3 years. What else? Occupation, secondary school teacher.
So how would you describe both your sexual and gender identity, and has your perception of your identity changed over time?
So I would be a gay male.
Yep.
No, it hasn't changed over time.
I'm pansexual and she, her, they, them. Some days where I don't necessarily label myself with anything, I like to just be a bit gender fluid most of the time.
My sexual identity is definitely lesbian. My gender identity is female. They've definitely changed over time. I didn't come out and start living as a lesbian until I was 37.
I was very boy crazy from a young age, but by the time I got to about 21, I thought I was bi. I was attracted to both men and women, but since then I've identified as pansexual because I feel like it's more about the person than whether they're male or female.
Do you remember the moments or events that made you realise that you weren't straight or cisgender?
I think movies and TV shows definitely influence a lot of that for a lot of people.
When it was a lecture and there was a girl who I had been speaking to and started to feel attraction to. That was sort of the moment that I went, oh, okay. So I'm not just attracted to all the men.
I used to go to Melbourne a lot with my dad for football and you'd meet a whole bunch of different people, and I think that's influenced me to look at gender differently. I'd bump into a lot of women who were, tomboys at the time was the best label, but they were really gender fluid because they didn't identify as a woman.
I remember a few, mainly during my late teens and early 20s, but I remember them through the lens of being so uncomfortable and being horrified and thinking, what am I going to do about this in a negative way?
What are some of the challenges you have faced as a queer person, and how have you navigated some of those challenges?
Okay, for me, it's been the whole journey when you think about Australia's development as a society. I grew up in the 70s in Australia and the 80s, so I've seen the change. The 80s was significant for a young person growing up because I was bombarded with the homophobia on the media about the AIDS crisis. So obviously I was affected by that because that sort of made you suppress whatever feelings you might have had, but the biggest crisis where I had to confront it and accept it was during year 12. So that was the moment I realised, I can't deny this, I can't hide this is who I am. So year 12 was my first personal crisis in terms of dealing with that.
I got labelled a dyke quite often.
I guess coming out later, those challenges were not as big because by the time I was finally ready to come out, I was ready to navigate them. I knew who I was, I had that confidence in myself. But I would say that being a secondary school teacher does add a layer to that because you have got these young people in your care, regardless of their thoughts and feelings and regardless of their parents' thoughts and feelings on your sexuality, and you don't know what that is. I guess that's the biggest challenge because I don't want to make young people feel uncomfortable, but at the same time, I'm not going to hide who I am.
I went on a few dates with women here in Horsham and told my parents, and they still think it's a phase to this day. And they're a completely different generation. My dad and mum are okay with people who are queer, but when you talk about being queer yourself, it's sort of within the family. They're not really.
I didn't want the complications of being other than straight. Being a mother had an incredible influence on suppressing my sexuality. I did not understand that you could be a mother and be gay because it just wasn't something that was done. There was no role model of that. So I thought in order to have children and in order to be a quote unquote good mother, whatever that meant, I couldn't be gay. And being a mother was so important to me that I was prepared to sacrifice that. You're also facing that, but in addition to, you're going to put your kids through the end of a marriage. You're going to completely change their perception of who their mother is. And I struggled with that for a long time, a long, long time.
Where have you felt most supported and seen as a queer person, and why do you think that this is important for queer people in the community?
Okay, so for me as an outsider, coming to a small town where you're not really a local until you've been there, 1,000 years? So by the time I got to the Wimmera, we passed the marriage equality vote. That was important because having grown up in a homophobic era, I'm always attuned to the environment.
I have felt the most seen as a queer person here at the town hall. Everyone here is so open-minded and so welcoming to diversity and change, and they want to do things that help people. They want to make a difference.
It is hilarious, but coming back here and actually being in this space and being in an art gallery has probably been the most accepted I've felt. Be myself. My friend asked me, she said, when we did the opening for this exhibition up on stage, like, was that the first time you'd ever spoken out in public and identified yourself as queer? I said, yes. I've had no negative feedback from that, which is brilliant, which shows we've actually grown a lot since I was younger.
Pleasingly, in my workplace with my colleagues, they've all been wonderful. Parent communities, by the majority, have also been amazing and wonderful, so that's been great. So I've been really supported and seen there.
The biggest revelation was the council elections. When it came to the crunch, in the privacy of your own home, people made that decision to vote for me, and I had the highest vote for Dimboola and the Shire in terms of numbers. I was hesitant because I once again grew up in a racist, homophobic Australia. So I was just mindful, really maybe on the surface it could be that they're showing tolerance, but in the privacy of your own home, were they really ready to pick me to represent them in the community? So the result confirmed that I was embraced by the majority of people. So for me, to be at the Imagineer, it's a story about transformation, of accepting who you are, so in my case, accepting my true self, but to work out who your true self is. You have to go through this journey where I've become fully formed as a human being, as who I am.
What changes do you hope to see in society, specifically towards acceptance of queer people in more conservative areas, such as the Wimmera?
Working with young people every day, there is far, far, far less prejudice against queer people than there was when I was growing up. It is talked about, it is normalised. There is a rainbow group at school that's actually attended by kids.
Less hate would be wonderful.
More acceptance and just a genuine warmth from people.
I'm hoping that Horsham will look completely different. I'm hoping it'll be more accepting and less conservative.
Part of my generation, the common theme is about shaming. So I think if society can improve by not shaming people.
What advice would you have for allies who want to be better supporters of the queer community?
Talk to queer people about how you can support them.
Be that shoulder, be that person for them to rely on, stand up for them.
Be open to changing how you speak. So like your pronouns, like being open to saying they and them.
There are many, many ways that you can be supportive. Not all of them involve being vocal and loud about your support. Some of them do, but many of them don't. And not all queer people want allies that are loud and proud and out and all dressed in rainbow. Some do, but not all. Some people just want an ally that will quietly stand beside them.
Finally, what message would you like to share with queer people who might be struggling with their identity, especially navigating society as a queer person?
Start slowly, dress the way you want to dress to represent whatever you want to feel like in the moment.
Life is short. You only have this one journey. Don't waste it. Sometimes going through that pain is good for you because it enables you to grow.
I know there's helplines out there. If you're not accepting of yourself or you're not feeling safe.
There is a happy life on the other side of all the difficulties of coming out and the risk that entails, the risk of rejection from your family, the risk of potentially losing careers, friends. Those risks are all real, but there absolutely is a happy future on the other side. It may not look like what you envision it will look like, but you will create it, and you really cannot live a happy life until you are ready to take that step, whenever that is.